This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to another in the series of ASCDI webinars. I'm Joe Marion, president of ASCDI. I want to thank you for joining us today. We have a kind of a unique webinar, and I'm not sure how we fit COVID and LinkedIn into the same webinar. The only thing I guess that's in common is both of our speakers' names are Brian, which has totally confused me. But short of that, this is what we're doing is for the balance of this year, we're having some tips for small to medium-sized business owners, and this is the first in the series of three. We're going to start off with Brian Weinthal. Brian is an attorney from a firm called Burke, Warren, McKay, and Saratella. Um, Brian used to be in the JAG Corps many years ago. Brian served down in Guantanamo Bay. I don't know if he's going to talk a little more about that, but probably one of the most interesting gigs I've ever heard. Now Brian specializes in law, employee law primarily, and we'll hear more about from Brian in a minute. And then we also have Brian Burke. Brian Burke is a Macintosh or an Apple reseller, but more famously known as the Mac Man. And he has a tremendous LinkedIn presence. And after Brian Weinthal, we'll hear from Brian Burke. So with that, real quickly, just let me, you guys are already probably too familiar with the buttons. You can, went too far. The buttons. You can mute yourself. You can turn on your camera. You can turn off your camera. You can chat with the other attendees. So feel free to use the buttons that we've all become too familiar with at this point. With that, let me turn it over to Brian Weinthal, the Mandate Man.
Well, thank you so much, Joe. Could I just get a thumbs up from folks if they can see my slide in front of them? All right, excellent. Well, thank you all for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Joe, thank you, and thank you, ASCDI, for having me. We are currently in what I would conservatively describe as a state of chaos in the United States when it comes to the idea of vaccination. We are very divided politically, we are very divided economically, and there is an ongoing debate over the power of employers to mandate vaccines in just about every setting. It can be difficult with so much ongoing debate to know what's going on or understand what's happening. So, what I wanted to do is give everybody a quick rundown on US law when it comes to vaccine mandates so that you can be armed with the tools that you have in order to ultimately make good decisions for your business relative to what you'd like to do. So, let's jump right into it. Okay, hopefully my slide has advanced here. Let me give you just a little bit of quick background on me. As Joe mentioned, I am a partner with a law firm called Burke Warren here in downtown Chicago, which is where I'm broadcasting to you from today. I am formerly a lieutenant commander with the United States Navy's Judge Advocate General, or JAG Corps. I did serve at Gitmo, as Joe mentioned. I am not going to be bringing up that particular segment of my life because much of it is classified. And unless Joe gives me enough scotch, it doesn't come to the forefront anytime soon. I am now currently a management side labor and employment lawyer. I work primarily on behalf of employers to assist them with regard to their concerns in dealing with employees. I do have extensive trial experience before both judges and juries, and I am a staunch devotee of Commander Kellstrom's theory of persuasive advocacy. Commander Kellstrom was the first military judge and the first judge overall that I ever appeared in front of. He still to this day ranks as the most terrifying human being I have ever met in my entire life. And when I would drone on at length in front of juries, he would look at me and say, Lieutenant Weinthal, the head can only absorb what the ass can endure. So I'm going to be very brief in my comments today, give you a quick rundown, and get off the stage with my dignity intact. So let's jump right into it. When we talk about vaccine mandates in this country are nothing new. In fact, as of 116 years ago, the Supreme Court had the first opportunity to consider a vaccine mandate in Jacobson versus Massachusetts. Jacobson was a minister. He was a minister at a time when smallpox was essentially destroying the United States. And what the state of Massachusetts did is it required a vaccine mandate for smallpox for those 21 and over, or Those who wouldn't get the vaccine were subject to a $5 fine. In a 7-2 ruling, the Supreme Court found that individual liberties that we all possess in times of sufficient danger can be limited or restrained by things such as a vaccine mandate. Now, what the court said all those 116 years ago was that you cannot actively make someone take a vaccine, but you can certainly have consequences for the failure to do so. And in this case, the consequence they spoke about was the economic penalty. Jacobson was clearly decided at a different time in our history. As I've indicated here, there was no FDA back then. And of course, we were dealing with a different disease, smallpox versus COVID, smallpox being significantly more virulent, and more lethal. But relatively speaking, the holding of Jacobson is still valid, and it largely explains why the term vaccine mandate is something of a misnomer. To be clear, healthcare in this country is a fundamental right, and all individuals have absolute total control over what medical treatments they receive or don't receive. So to be clear, no one in this country is ever going to make you receive a medical treatment of any kind, including a vaccine, that you don't want. But what is legal is to put conditions on your decision not to take that vaccine. Whether that was the $5 fine we were talking about in Jacobson 116 years ago, or whether that is now current penalties that occur for folks who don't want to take the vaccine relative to their job status. Now let's walk through some of this. And before we do, I want to put vaccine mandates on hold for just 1 second. So for a second, don't worry about the idea of vaccine mandating. Throughout this pandemic, our primary guidance for business owners has come from the Department of Labor, the DOL, and the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Those have been our primary authority sources for what employers can do to keep their workplaces safe against COVID-19. Both have issued significant guidance. What's important to note is, even before the idea of vaccines being widely available, both the EEOC and the DOL had made certain legal calls that you should be aware of. First, both organizations, both federal authorities, have said that mandatory testing for COVID-19 is legal. So, for example, in your businesses, if you wanted to suddenly declare that you were going to have a workplace test for COVID-19, absolutely legal and within your power to do so. Entry onto the premises, same thing. If you at your business wanted to make a rule that every morning before entering the premises, someone had to provide evidence of a negative COVID-19 test, you could establish a barrier at the entranceway to conduct that testing before people come in. Negative COVID-19 testing to return to work is also legal. So, for example, if someone contracts COVID-19 in your workplace and ultimately has a significant period of time of illness, you can require a negative COVID-19 test for them to come back to the office. And finally, incentives to get vaccinated. You can offer significant, powerful incentives for people to take the vaccine, be they gift cards, be they advantageous time off, be they cash incentives. The sky is now the limit when it comes to incentives. Again, all of these things were legal and permissible options for you even before vaccines were widely available. Now that we have vaccines, employers have even more tools available to them to keep their workplaces safe. Employers can absolutely, legally mandate vaccination as a condition of employment. In other words, if you wanted to say to your respective workforces, you must be vaccinated to work here, you can do so. The employers who mandate have to ensure the availability of certain accommodations for those employees who object. There are really two primary accommodations we recognize. One is on a disability basis, and the other is on a religious basis. I'm going to speak more about both of those in just a few minutes, but for the moment I want to tell you more about what you can do with vaccines here. Putting aside the idea of a mandatory vaccine, employers can conduct surveys of their workplaces to determine who is vaccinated and who is not. This is not considered a medical exam of any kind. So, for example, If you're an employer that is considering putting a vaccine mandate in place, you can precede that by asking your employees individually and privately whether or not each of them is vaccinated. That does not create problems for you. It's not considered medical testing. But what you want to avoid if you do a vaccine survey of some kind is the idea of asking why not if someone is not vaccinated. So in other words, you can ask the question, you can get a statistic in your workplace for who is and who isn't, but what you don't want to do is for the people that report to you they are not vaccinated, you don't want to take that next step to asking why yet. Let's keep plugging through this. Everyone is somewhat confused as to where we are relative to the announcement that the Biden administration previously made about mandatory vaccination. As we know, on September 9th, President Biden announced that he was directing the Department of Labor to issue new regulations on vaccination that would apply to businesses with 100 or more employees. Please note, these directives and this new guidance has not gone into effect yet. Okay? There has been nothing adopted by the federal government that requires any business at the moment to put a vaccine mandate in place. According to President Biden, the new regulations are going to be promulgated by OSHA and are going to require either mandatory vaccination or negative testing for COVID-19 at least once per week in lieu of testing. Included within that are paid time off for recovery from vaccine side effects. Now, I wrote thought explosion here because, of course, my mind blew up when the president made this announcement. There are 100 things that need to be considered in this process, and what I think it's important for everyone to be aware of is there is already a law firm somewhere that has a preliminary injunction motion ginned up such that the moment these guidances are put in place, they're going to move to stop or enjoin them through a court. So there's going to be a robust legal battle of this stuff, even if we do see it. But the questions that come to my mind are several. First, I'm sure that many of you a few weeks ago saw the mayor of New York announce that New York would be adopting at some point in the future guidelines for not employees, but rather patrons to use gyms, bars, restaurants, and theaters. That's a tall order, and frankly, even when I heard that announcement, I was in doubt as to how the mayor of New York would make that work. We have not seen that guidance yet, so I wonder whether or not the president's announcement was simply not a further effort psychologically to get businesses thinking along the lines of mandatory vaccination, such that we may never even see these guidance or regulations come out. Other questions out there, why 100 employees? How is that somehow unique? How is that somehow different? I think the Biden administration is going to have a tough time justifying why that number is somehow different than any other numbers they could have picked. And of course, the question becomes, who pays for this? If the government is telling you that as a business owner, you have to grant paid time off for an order that they gave, most business owners are going to look at the government and say, how are you funding that? Because I'm certainly not paying that amount. It's your vaccine order. All unanswered questions, all things that will become immediately apparent when and if we see the guidance. But the point of this slide is you are not currently required at the moment to do anything. And we'll see what happens in the next several weeks. I've added a caveat for those of you that have been lucky enough to win federal contracts. The Biden administration has put into place regulations that require federal contractors to be vaccinated. So if you have or are holding a federal contract to do work for the government, they can require that the people you put on site to do the work you've won for them are vaccinated against COVID-19. It comes along with the idea that when you control the purse strings going somewhere, you can put conditions on what that looks like and what must be done to comply with it. So bear that in mind if any of you have federal contracts. If you do decide to put a vaccine mandate in place in your business, you want to initially conduct a census to determine who is vaccinated and who isn't. Why? Because if you find out that all of your employees are vaccinated, you don't have to put a mandatory vaccine order in place. If you do find that you have folks that are not vaccinated and you'd like to put a standard order in place, you want to adopt a written workplace policy to do that. You need to provide options for those who need reasonable accommodations for either religious or disability purposes, as I just talked about. And you need to keep any requests for accommodations confidential and also separate from your personnel records. So if you have an employee that's objecting to getting vaccinated, if they raise an objection and want an accommodation for either a disability or their religion, you want to keep that a secret, just need to know at the company level, and also keep any paperwork generated in connection with that separate and apart from any standard personnel records. Alternative testing for COVID-19 can be an effective means of limiting those objections. So in other words, whether you're going to require somebody to vaccinate or not, if they refuse, an alternative negative testing format can help you to ensure that you're not bringing COVID-19 into the workplace. We are nearly finished, and I'm going to hand the program back in just a couple minutes here, but I want to speak very quickly about the two different types of objections that we see. The first are disability objections. These are relatively easy to address. Why? Because they deal with medical evidence, they deal with science. They, at least in my experience thus far, have been most closely associated with immunodeficiency conditions. The best example is people who are going through chemotherapy treatments who are recommended by their doctor that because of their immunocompromised condition, they can't get a vaccine right now. The other benefit to the disability objection is that they require medical evidence to sustain them. You as business owners are also not required to just simply accept the medical justification you get. In other words, if you have an employee who comes in with a schlub, doctor opinion that you don't think is valid, you can absolutely request more information or even request the independent medical examination, IME, to confirm that point. Be aware that the reasonable accommodation of working from home is a powerful one. Early on during the pandemic, many businesses a few months in announced that they would be reopening and bringing people back to work. Back then, that was a good argument. But understand, if you have gone 2 years being out of the office and someone requests as a reasonable accommodation the need to continue working from home as you reopen, as an employer, it's going to be a tough defense to say, well, no, we're reopening. Because of course the legal argument asserted against you is, you've been doing this for 2 years. So bear in mind that working from home could be a powerful defense that many employees might assert. Boy, oh boy, is religion proving to be a difficult and dangerous issue right now. And the EEOC, in fact, just yesterday issued new guidance on this. The primary religious objections that we are seeing to vaccination is the concept that has largely been perpetrated by the Catholic religious right, that there are somehow fetal cells, in the vaccines, or that fetal cells were used for developing the vaccines. Of course, that is complete hooey. Okay, there are no fetal cells in the vaccine, nor were the vaccines developed using fetal cells. However, the efficacy of the vaccines was tested on cloned cell lines that have been developed in medical science over the past roughly 40 years from certain fetal cells that were cultivated in the 1970s and 1980s. So the argument out there is that by getting vaccinated, you are somehow endorsing abortion. Employers will need to assess whether or not that belief is sincerely held or not. But what the EEOC just came out and said in its guidance yesterday is, sincerely held religious beliefs are not a hedge against political opinions, economic opinions, or social opinions. And in fact, if you have an employee that has previously objected on a different ground, their religious objection and pushback probably doesn't have as much teeth. All 50 states have educational vaccine requirements for children, MMR, chickenpox, hepatitis. All of those were developed in the same ways as the current COVID-19 vaccines. So for example, if you have an employee that is objecting on the sincerely held religious belief that they can't get vaccinated, and yet they have children going to public school, theoretically, you've already started to poke a hole in what it is they're arguing in terms of their sincerely held religious objection. At the same time, Drugs like Tylenol, Pepto-Bismol, and X-Lax were also tested on the same lines we're talking about here. I'll add in there, of course, because it's a helpful legal argument from my perspective, that of course the Pope is vaccinated. The Pope has called vaccines a blessing and has also deemed vaccination consistent with religious dogma. So as an employer, these are tough issues to deal with, but realistically, I want you to know that you have the freedom to ask further questions, to get more into the weeds on this, to work with employees to figure out if what they're asserting truly is a sincerely held religious belief, or if in fact this is just pushback because they don't want to take the vaccine. One of the most helpful things the EEOC said yesterday is that the fear of side effects, or the idea of not wanting to deal with side effects, does not qualify as a significantly sincerely held enough religious belief to justify not taking the vaccine. So where are we on this? Where are we in the United States? Well, the idea is we're in complete chaos right now. Okay, but ultimately, mandatory vaccination is clearly emerging as the winner. I've given a couple examples here that you've probably all seen and heard about in the news. The New York Teachers Union, Boston Medical Workers, and the LA County school systems, all very different contexts, all have successfully imposed a vaccine mandate on their respective populations. States are continuing to push back. As we see, 9 states have banned mask mandates, 20 have banned vaccine passports, and Texas is now at least claiming that having COVID-19 previously is an available basis to object. Those are slowly but surely getting killed in the courts, but it's taking time. But understand that there are many red states that are pushing back on the Biden agenda to increase vaccination and vaccine rates. The best advice I can give you during this pandemic is don't be at the tip of the spear, okay? Don't decide that you're going to come up with some new, novel, cool, interesting way to handle the problem, because those are the people that go down first during this pandemic, all right? Follow the guidance that's been set forth both by companies that have preceded you and the EEOC and the DOL. Do what they're recommending. You're not going to get a lot of notice on the radar by doing so, okay, which is key for employers in terms of minimizing risk. And of course, ask an employment lawyer if you have questions. If you need help working through this stuff, which is difficult, contact an employment lawyer. Take the time to actually work through this, because an ounce of prevention is worth a mile in terms of saving yourself litigation and liability risk later on. All right, I think I just about fulfilled my time quota here. I'll take just a minute or two of questions. If anybody's got anything, I'm happy to answer, or I can take it offline later on if folks have more in-depth questions about their business in particular.
Hey, Brian, what we're going to do is we're going to circulate a recording of today's presentation with everybody, along with your contact information, so everybody will have that if they want it. But just real quickly, because I don't want to step on Brian Burke's time, but so I did hear you say that size does not matter. I was always under the impression you had to be a business of 100 or more in order for the government to mandate these things. Apparently, size does not matter. That's a quick question, and I'm seeing a nod.
Yeah, that's correct. I don't know what the theory or purpose behind selecting 100 employees is, but I would not be surprised either if that goes up or down if final guidance is ever released. No unique legal significance to the number 100, Joe.
And you mentioned surveying your employees. How does that? What about privacy issues? I survey my employees and I find out who's been vaccinated or who's had COVID, who has religious objections. Am I invading their privacy?
You are not. So the idea is take it in steps. Start with a vaccine survey. If you want to find out who in your company is vaccinated and who isn't, find a confidential way to ask each individual that. That might be a survey monkey that's directed only singularly so people can't access the results, or that might be you and an HR officer actually talking to individual employees to find out one way or the other. The ask is never going to get you in trouble. Stop there, though. So once you know whether they're vaccinated or not, stop there, and then we'll take further steps later on with regard to just the employees that have said no to figure out if they have objections, they're protesting it. But you want to take it in sequence, and you always want to keep their information confidential one-to-one.
Okay, and last question, because I do want to move over to Brian. What about what's my liabilities? Let's say I mandate COVID vaccines, or I mandate testing, and my employee gets sick from the COVID vaccine, or worse. What are my liabilities as employees? As an employer, since I mandated those vaccinations?
A lot of people ask me that, Joe. I suspect the liability is going to be not significant, or at least no bigger than it would be if your employer tripped and fell in the middle of your workplace. workplace. Almost certainly the idea behind workplace injuries is going to be consistent with the theory of workers' comp as what covers you there. So I don't see any real significant risk to it. The more important thing to keep in mind is the vaccines have a tremendous safety margin, even if there are minimal side effects or even a weekend full of unpleasant side effects. Those go away in large measure. They are not going to be actionable workplace injury claims for the most part. But I don't think significant liability there. Again, no different than if somebody tripped, fell, had an accident, cut themselves. It all goes to kind of a workers' comp basis from what we're seeing in state law.
Brian Weinthal, thank you. Really a super presentation. Sorry I cut you so short, but I appreciate it. And we'll circulate Brian's information to everybody. So if you want to follow up with Brian, feel free to do so, or contact me and I'll put you in touch. Brian, thanks so much.
Thank you, Joe.
I'm going to flip over now to Brian Burke, the Mac Man. Take it away, Mac Man.
Who here is ready to learn about LinkedIn? Let me see some hands. I would love everyone to take some time to turn their cameras on now so they can engage during this presentation. That would be super awesome. Typically I do this as an interactive workshop that lasts about 3 hours at people's companies and at Vistage groups. So this is a shortened, condensed version. I'm going to give you guys a lot of highlights. And if you want, we can go deeper at a different time, either personally or with your company. So I want you guys to know a little bit about me so you understand my background before we dig in. And just give a couple highlights here is I've been the Chief Mac Man at CellerMac.com now since we launched 12 years ago. And we've paid out $45 million to all of our awesome customers. So it's been a fun ride so far. We've been growing tremendously. We made Inc. 5000 the last 3 years in a row and 4 years in total. And a couple other fun facts about me is that I'm also a sommelier. So I started a hobby wine business called Party Som. I really feel like I need to start a new business every other year. So this is my latest one this year, is launching my LinkedIn consulting and masterclass business. I'm also a dad to 3 kids. I have 2 girls and a son now named Macintosh. Very fun. And I've been married to my wife, Kat, now for 7 years. And people call me Brian the Mac Man. And I always show up in my blue suit and usually have a blue background, but we're rocking the green today. So some things that we're going to be working on with everyone are optimizing your LinkedIn profile for engagement. And then we're going to work on creating the right message and actions to help drive opportunities on LinkedIn, followed with tips for social selling and personal branding. So one of the reasons that everyone needs to focus on LinkedIn is that it's the least posted on network. People are posting every single day on Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat and TikTok, but less than 1% of people actually post on LinkedIn. And I'm looking at you all. Most people are on LinkedIn and engaging with others, but simply not posting. So one of the things I do in my class is I get everyone to make a post during the class, and that won't happen today, but I want to encourage you all to go make a post. It could even be about this talk or something you learned here today, and feel free to tag me and send me a message. I would love to engage with you all. So some high-level stats on LinkedIn is that it's an 18-year-old network. So it's been around for a long time, but just getting a lot more usage lately. A couple of years ago, it only had a quarter billion members, and now it's up to 750 million members. And no doubt, it's the most trusted social network out there. We've kind of lost trust for Facebook and Instagram, but we're still holding a lot of trust in LinkedIn, fortunately. A stat I really want to share with everyone is that 3/4 of members are outside the US. And I want you to keep an open mind to connect with people that are outside of your inner circle and outside of the country, because these people also have friends and people in their network that can help you out. So just because someone is in India or Nigeria, they have great contacts back in the US and could drive business your way. So keep an open mind when people are reaching out to you and connecting from other countries. Showing you what is possible on LinkedIn is that I've gone from 13,000 to over 66,000 followers in just the last year, and it has been a crazy ride, and you have to put in the effort in the long term to really make this happen. So now I'm getting a lot of profile views, for example, and this really drives business. One of the biggest things is getting people just to come to your profile and posting engaging content to get them there. You don't have to always be salesy. So in the last year, I've had over 22 million views on my content, over 355,000 likes, 64,000 comments, and 15,000 shares. And one of the things I want to really impose on people is the post shareable content. If you're posting shareable content, people really lean in, and that helps your content go viral. So unfortunately, posts that are about yourself and about salesy things just don't get shared. But if you post really fun videos, for example, they will get shared and go viral, and that'll bring a lot more people into your network. And here are two examples of content that went viral. The one on the left is a kindness video, really an inspirational short clip about this girl and the soccer ball, and the whole village is loving it. That one's over 24,000 likes now. And then I made a poll about if you've gotten a job on LinkedIn or applied for anything on LinkedIn, and that one's over 1 million views now. So really kind of leaning into what the LinkedIn community wants to see, which is the kindness, inspirational style videos, and also content that is about getting jobs, for example, because that is really what LinkedIn started off as. So people love answering polls that are related to jobs. So I know you're all probably very excited to go make your post today, but there's a lot of work to do before you make your post to ensure your profile is set up correctly for engagement. The number one thing people are always going to see is your headline. So whether you're making a comment or making a post, this is the first thing people are going to see when they're looking at your comments and content, and it has to be very engaging. The number one problem I see is everyone's using their work title. Unfortunately, no one cares if you're vice president, president, managing director. It just doesn't matter. Those titles are meaningless on LinkedIn. So you want to make a insightful, engaging style headline that will truly bring someone into your network. And to do so, you only have a few words that really show up before it gets cut off. So typically you have about that 5 words when you're making a comment, for example, that someone can see your headline, and then they have to click to see more after that. And you have a total of 220 characters to max out your headline, so you can feel free to use it all up. Just be aware that the first 5 words are the most important. And some ideas that you can put in your headline, you can put where you're an expert at and really help define your value. That'll lead someone to click on you to learn more. And you can also change your headline. Don't feel like it's static. If you're hiring this week, you could make it all about hiring. If you want to grow your business and find new opportunities, you can put that in there. Kind of make it your goal. And also make it a call to action. If someone doesn't know what to do, they won't take action. And this goes for everything in life. Tell people what you really want them to do, and then your headline's a great place to define that on LinkedIn. So here's an example from my profile. And it says, I bought $45 million in Apple products in my life. Can I buy your old Apple devices? So it gets cut off right after that word Apple. So someone sees, I bought $45 million in Apple. They're really intrigued. They don't really know what that might mean if they don't know me yet, but they're going to click hopefully to learn more. So that's going to lead them to my profile, and then they're going to be able to read the whole thing and understand my call to action is I want to buy your old Apple devices. And this leads to more than one opportunity every single day from someone clicking because they are intrigued and they don't even know what it is. And then they find out more on my headline. So go make your new headline today and make it intriguing, and send me a message if you want me to review it. All right, the second most important thing is your about section. So now that you have a very intriguing headline and people have clicked to your profile to learn more, they're hopefully going to start reading your about section right below that. And you have, about 25 to 40 words, depending if it's on mobile or desktop, before it gets cut off. And you can see exactly where it gets cut off in my example here. And I purposely even dropped that blue heart, which is part of my branding, but I wanted to showcase that right at the end. And people are like, oh, what else does he have there? So hopefully they're going to click to kind of learn more about me. And here is a great example of how to showcase your about section. So you want to create a story. So I start off, saying I founded Cellular Mac, 10 years ago. Then I have a couple of proof sources. I'm the #1 rated in the industry, and I drop my Trading for a Purpose program to showcase some of my charitable work. And then I mentioned my TED Talk to help also build trust. And then I also put some bullet point style things that are going on personally in my life. People want to learn more about you, not just about your business. So it really helps to showcase who you are as a human. And these are a couple of things that were, top of mind, things that I love doing every day. And then I finish with a call to action. I want people to go to the websites. So unfortunately, nothing is clickable. So make sure you have a short link. If it's a really long link in there, maybe something copy and paste it, but make it so someone can just easily remember it and go type it in their browser. And make sure to always finish with that call to action, because if not, you're really leaving the audience not knowing what to do next. They will appreciate the fact that you have a call to action in here. So tell a story, finish with a call to action. Another very common mistake I see is a missing profile picture, or just one that needs a big update. You really want to keep your face as close to the frame as you can. You want people to see your eyes. If they can see your eyes and you're closely zoomed in your face, it really helps build trust. So make sure your profile picture is public, and if you need help updating it, I am happy to do that as well. And the next thing I see is missing cover photos, and that is above your profile picture, that banner-like area. Everyone is missing one if they haven't updated it in the last few years, since LinkedIn made that an option. So some great ideas to put in there are either pictures of people at your company, could be your office building, something really cool in your industry, but think about it kind of like a billboard. I have a picture up there with my company, and then I put in the middle, I want to buy your Apple devices. So it's a call to action as well in that space. All right, this is the point that I tell everyone to take a short break. So you take a quick break, and then you come back, and I say, did you enjoy your break? Anyone enjoy the break? Ah! And the point is that the audience really enjoys a break too. When people come on a social network, they're looking for a mental vacation. So even though it is LinkedIn, it is a social network when it comes down to it. So people want that quick break, so give it to them. And when you're thinking about a break, things that are showing kindness and inspiration truly win on this network. And think about it from your audience's point of view. Do you want to see a salesy post, or you want to see something heartwarming that might bring you tears or a laugh? So that's the type of thing that people really want to see. So lean into that. Here was a quick example of one from my industry. I'm showing these really cool Apple AR glasses. Just a quick 10-second video that gives people a mental vacation. So you could find something that's related to your industry or not related. People love seeing dogs and cats too. And I know sometimes it feels weird to share something like that people would say is more meant for Facebook, but that type of content truly does well on LinkedIn. Here are some questions I get a lot. People want to know if I should be tagging others. If you're tagging people in a spammy way, it's really going to hurt your post. For instance, if it's in the top copy of your post and you've tagged 10 people and no one's engaged, the post is going to fall completely flat because LinkedIn algorithm knows those people don't want to see it. However, if I were to make a post about this organization and tag Joe, for example, and he engaged, that actually would help the post because they know it was relevant. It was a relevant person to tag. So be very mindful of your tags. And if you're tagging someone, I recommend telling them in advance. Say, hey, Joe, I'm gonna make a great tag with you today. I'd love for you to engage on it afterwards. And then I'll send Joe a link so he can go engage and make it very easy for him to do so. The next question I get is, should I post as my company or from my personal account? Both are very good, but the company posts will never go as viral as the personal accounts. And the basic reason behind it is that LinkedIn is based on humans, and people want to deal with people. We all want to be buying from people and not just from a faceless company. So if you're going to make something that make a splash, I recommend posting on your personal. And if you are making company posts, you also could just copy the content over to your personal account and maybe change it a little bit to make it more personalized. But I recommend that over a share. I would definitely rather engage with a personal post than a shared post. Also, people are asking if they should automate their posts. The high-level answer is absolutely not. LinkedIn knows that you're automating the posts and they will not do well. And the reason behind it is there's no engagement usually on the automated posts. So if you're not engaging before and after you make a post, typically it's going to fall flat. You know, if you're a mega influencer, you probably can get away with some automation, but in general, I do not recommend it. And if you have to do some automation as part of the way your company is set up, at least go engage on LinkedIn immediately before and after that post goes live. The next question is about using hashtags. The best way to explain hashtags is like a filing system. So if you want to do a hashtag computer or hashtag ITAD, you know, that'll keep it in that ITAD space, and you'll be able to go back and find other posts you've made that are related to that. It also helps clue the audience in to what your post is all about. So maybe you have a very long post, and I don't want to read it, but I see the hashtag of Apple, and I'm very interested in that. I might go back and read the post. You also can make a personal hashtag. You know, mine is hashtag Brian the Mac Man. So I'll use that in a lot of my posts, and it's very easy to go find my content using that hashtag. And the magic number is between 3 and 5. That is a good number that doesn't look spammy, and LinkedIn likes that amount. And if you've seen the creator mode, they are recommending people post 5 hashtags for people to follow on their personal account. So that's one of the things that's kind of led to 5 being the magic number. So do not post 100 hashtags. That is going to look very spammy and lead to low engagement. So people are always wondering what type of content should they post. The best answer is to post them all. But in general, image and video posts are going to do a lot better than a static text post. Another option is to do a document post. You know, that's a PDF document. You can make them in Canva or Microsoft PowerPoint or Apple's Keynote, for example. And when you export those into a PDF, you can post them right on there. And it's a nice way to have a slider show up on LinkedIn. Polls are the most trending type of post right now. They'll get the most views, but they also get the least engagement. So if you want to get a lot of eyeballs, a poll is the best way to go. But if you want to get the most shares, a video is the best way to go. And this goes back to what people are really interested in, and they want to share videos with their network that they find very engaging. When you're doing a company post, at least do 1 a week. That helps the algorithm kind of keep up with the company page. If you do more, that's awesome, but just making sure it stays consistent. And once again, mix up the type of content because it'll do better overall when you're not doing the same type of content every day, and it'll keep your audience more engaged. So now's the time we would go make a post. And I recommend only spending about 10 to 15 minutes crafting your post. If you're doing it more time than that, you're probably overthinking it. And before you make a post, I always recommend engaging. And a good number to keep in top of mind is about 10 to 20 likes. And it doesn't truly matter, you know, whose post you're liking in order to get the algorithm more engaged. So just go through, spend a few minutes liking some posts in there. Don't overthink it. Also drop, you know, 5 comments or so. And this just helps to clue the algorithm into you're a real person, you're not a bot. And that'll help make the post do better when it goes live. And also those people that you've liked, they're going to see your content higher up on their feed when they log back into LinkedIn. All right, diving into some personal branding tips. Be you and be unique. And one of the best things to do is to pick a color and branding style and stick with it and use it all the time. You know, obviously I've used my blue everywhere I can, and people remember me for it. I've had people stop me at the airport before and be like, I've seen those blue shoes. It doesn't even matter if I have a mask on, they can still see me. And when I show up, you know, I wear my bow tie on social media wherever I can, and that also is part of the branding that people truly remember and keeps me unique. And also make your profile photo pop. It is super easy to remove the background and add a fun background, for example, and that's going to make people see you more in the feed. You know, when you have a very bland style photo, it's going to blend in with everyone else's and will not show up when someone's scrolling quickly through their feed. You can also create a personal hashtag, like I mentioned with Brian the Mac Man. If you do that, it'll just help clue people in that that's your style, and so you can go out there and be that every single day. Diving into some social selling, I'll get into kind of how to do it later, but wanted to showcase that I did a $1 million sale on LinkedIn about 3 years ago. I sold the 29 wrapped pallets of iPads that you can see in this picture. And it's actually been a great relationship now that I've worked with them, every single month since. So I highly recommend trying to do some social selling. So don't be afraid to get out there and make a salesy post. And if you need some help making a post, this great network called Influencer Active, they have hundreds of influencers on there. I'm considered a micro influencer still at my 66,000 followers. One of my friends, Anthony J. James, he has over 3 million now. So if you have him make a post for you, it makes quite a splash. So, you can hire an influencer, like myself, it's only $119 and I'll go on there, make a post for you and bring awareness to my network. And it's really a great way to kind of showcase your brand and your services to a, huge network out there that was virtually untapped for you so far. And if you're kind of curious how your sales ranking is doing on LinkedIn, this is a really quick, free way to check it out. You can go to linkedin.com/sales/SSI and it'll show you your ranking. And I don't want to put too much into the number, but it will showcase you where you're at now and can kind of motivate you potentially to keep pushing forward and check it, month over month to see where you're standing. So now talking about how we do social selling. Build trust, don't sell too hard. If you are immediately hit with a salesy post, you probably just turn it away. So you have to sell below the fold. And below the fold is where after you click see more. So there's about 3 to 4 lines of text that you can see before you have to click see more. And one way to do it, you can ask a very engaging question, for example, and you can leave a few lines of blank space and then start your selling copy. So people will only see that question when they first get started. They'll have to click see more and then they'll be hit with your selling message. I also want to mention that it is okay to include an outbound link. A couple of years ago, it would really destroy your post if you included a link, but now it's okay to link to your website, for example, or your e-commerce store. And as a reminder, make your content fun. The more fun it is, the easier it will be to sell. So, example of that is I had a lot of chargers for sale the other day, and I made a really ridiculous video of myself, the slow motion video of the chargers raining down on me, and that got a lot of attention. So when you're thinking about how to do LinkedIn, there's a couple high-level tips, is that you have to post consistently. And for me, that's been 3 years now of posting twice a day. And it's really been like a hyperbolic ride in the last few months. So it takes a lot of consistency to get there. And I recommend spending about 30 minutes a day to make it happen. And that seems like a big ask. So, if you can't do it every day, maybe it's 2-3 days a week. But the more often and more consistent you do it, the better results you'll have. And it truly is a long game. You're not going to see results on day one. You might make a post and only get 1 or 2 likes. So keep it up, and in the long run, you will succeed. When you're thinking about the best time to make a post, typically it's early morning and late night, and that's when not every single person is posting. If you post at 10, 11 a.m., everyone else is on there posting, but if you post at 7 a.m., you've beaten out a lot of that crowd. And the same thing at night, if you're posting at 10, 11 p.m., typically there's way less, traffic to hit your posts up there. So your post can do better than others as you're the only one posting that content. And another thought is to post when your audience is active. So if your audience happens to be somewhere else in the world, for example, or in different time zones in the United States, be aware of that and try to post when your audience is the most active. People are always wondering whether they should accept connections from people they don't know. So I like to tell them a little story. Would you accept connections from someone you don't know? And I reply, not long ago, I didn't know you. Like, I don't know a lot of you today, but I'm looking forward to getting to know you, and I would be very open to accepting all your connection requests. So I want to make sure that you also keep an open mind on LinkedIn and any social platform, that there's a lot to be gained from people that you don't yet know on there. And these people could be amazing connections and relationships going forward. I have a lot more tips, and I'm happy to do a much deeper class in the future. Feel free to shoot me a message. I think everyone has my information from the organization's email blast that went out announcing my membership last week. And I also recently launched brianthemacman.com, and you can go on there to learn more about my class and to book me for a coaching. So I got a ton more tips, but out of time, and I would love to hear questions from anyone. So if you guys want to jump in to do some questions, that would be awesome.
Brian, I'll kick it off, but anybody has questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask them verbally, probably the easiest way to do it. But Brian, you mentioned engaging, and I wasn't sure I think I got it, but you said, before you post, make sure to engage. So you just mean like liking somebody else's posts, or what do you mean by? Give me
Yeah,
some examples.
exactly. Go through and like 10 to 20 posts. It's literally that simple. You could scroll and try to find every person you know on there, but just liking 10 posts tells the LinkedIn algorithm that you're a live human on the site and kind of primes it to be ready to go when you make your post.
Got it, got it, got it. And one of the limits, I hear a lot, from, we have a PR company we work with. They say don't post too much on LinkedIn because they have an algorithm, and if you post too much, you're gonna drop in, in the ratings. And by the way, and what does that mean? If LinkedIn drops my ratings, what does that do to me? So two questions: can I post too much, and what does dropped in my ratings even mean?
So I wouldn't scale up too fast. If you're making one post a week, I wouldn't go on and make 10 a day. But over time, you can post a lot more. But I do not recommend some of these, posting every hour, for example, using an automation tool. That would really, really hurt your visibility going forward, because LinkedIn would kind of consider it spam. And people, frankly, can't engage that often with your content. I post 2 to 3 times a day. That's a lot for a lot of people, and not everyone wants to see my content, more often than that. I actually polled my audience about a month or so ago, and I asked them how many times people want to see it, and they don't want to see it really more than 3 times. They can't engage 10 times a day.
Okay. Anybody? I have a million questions, but let me open up to anybody else. Anybody before I go?
Hey, Brian, I've got a couple questions.
Hi,
I'll do one at a
is that
time.
Karen?
Yes, it's Karen. Um, so amazing. Thank you to both of you, both Brians. My question to you is, can you talk about participation in groups?
Oh, yeah.
Do you mean pods when you say groups, or do you mean
No,
LinkedIn
like
official groups?
special interest pods, like, people that resell products, or, specialty groups from my industry.
Well, if you're in a LinkedIn group and you're not, most groups on LinkedIn are not that engaging. Most people just want to engage more personal content. But if you're in a pod and everyone is liking each other's posts, you'll get an artificial lift, but it'll be very short-lived. It won't be a long-term effect. And then when that pod goes away at some point, your content's going to fall flat again. So if you want to send if you want to send a link to, maybe 1 or 2 people to show you some love on it, I think that's awesome. But I do not recommend being in a large pod, for example, and trying to get everyone to engage on your post.
Brian, can I offer a suggestion?
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
That was me, Brian Weinthal. So I have a networking group, and we have a LinkedIn group for ourselves. And much like you're saying, the goal is we have the same schedule set every week. So every Tuesday at 4 is when all of us are going to post our content. We share it to the group so that it gets 125 likes right out of the box. We
That's
have to
smart.
keep it consistent, though, is the idea. So it's a way of escalating or increasing your
Yeah.
view for each post, but it's got to be consistent, like you're saying. It can't just be sometimes.
Get it going viral right out of the bat.
That's a good idea.
That's a
And
great
for
idea.
example, yeah, if we all made a post, at this moment, and we all liked each other's post, we'd have 45 likes, and then the LinkedIn algorithm would say that everyone likes the content, so it can get shown to a lot more people. So it does help when you get likes very quickly on your post.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah, Karen,
Sure.
but after your third question, we start to send you a bill, but go ahead, give it a shot.
I'm only asking two. So I talked to somebody that was a LinkedIn coach once, and he said, don't just like somebody's post, that's basically meaningless, that you need to write something specific relative to what they posted. And I wanted to get your feedback on that.
It is very helpful to leave comments, and that is part of the priming the algorithm to leave a few comments out there before you make your own post. And by leaving comments, people are much more likely to come back and comment on yours. And so, yeah, if you're just leaving likes, it's not going to drive very much engagement back to your post.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Come on, tough questions, everyone.
Well, Brian, I do want to ask one, because I didn't understand that, and maybe I'm beating a dead horse, but I have groups that I belong to. I don't know, Apple resellers group, and then I have my main. So I want to post, something great happened today. do I just post it to the general public or do I post it to that group? Karen might ask that, but I didn't understand the difference between a pod and a group, I guess.
I would post it to your personal page and not the group. I mean, a few of the Apple reseller groups, for example, that I've looked in on LinkedIn, they're either the content is very stale or it's very spammy, and there's not a lot of true engagement going on there.
Okay. So the key word is engagement.
Yes. I mean, I spend hours a day on LinkedIn, and I do spend a lot of time because it does lead to a lot of business. But it takes a lot of engagement to keep up with an audience and to get them growing.
And how do you get people to follow you?
By posting good content, sharing stuff that has value, whether it's fun, intriguing, or has great business knowledge.
So you don't say follow me, please follow me.
I do actually say that in the bottom of my posts. It's kind of a standard practice.
Okay.
You want to be aware that
one tip I did. Oh, go ahead, Brian.
No, I was just to say you want to be aware that if you reach out with too many follow requests, LinkedIn's going to shut you down. So don't be sending random spammy requests for people to follow you, because you will get hit with a lockdown on your account.
That's true. If you open too many profiles, I looked at everyone's profile that shared my posts the other week, and LinkedIn didn't like that.
Oh.
What I was going to say is, if you turn on creator mode, at that point it'll make your profile have a plus follow button instead of having the standard connect button. So it's more easily available for people to follow you, and it's better on the mentality that they're not going to get denied if you don't accept their request. And it also will add a plus follow button to the corner of all your content, so it makes it much easier for your audience to follow you, even without you saying, please follow me.
Great. And Brian Burke, so we know you sell Apple products, so everybody's looking to buy or sell Apple products, you're the guy. But you also do one-on-one consulting on social media?
Yes, just on LinkedIn though. I don't prescribe to knowing the Facebook and Instagram algorithms, but I do one-on-one coaching on LinkedIn and do group classes.
Great. Okay, last chance for questions.
Joe,
Okay.
would you be willing to look into a group class for ASCDI with Brian?
Without a doubt, yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, coming up, guys, this week we're going to be in Alpharetta, Georgia. It's October 28th. It's a sellout. We've sold out. There might be one or two cancellations, so if you're in that area and you want to try to squeeze in, give Billy or myself, contact us, and we'll see if we can kind of squeeze you in. But that's this Thursday. We're going to be in Alpharetta, Georgia. And then coming up, we have Jersey in November 10th, and the Newport Beach in January. We also have a couple of virtual meetings. We have one on November 17th and one on December 8th. So feel free to join us either virtually or in person. Want to thank you, and stay tuned for some more business tips for resellers from ASCDI. Brian and Brian, thank you guys very much. The Mac Man and the Mandate Man. Thank you guys. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks for hosting us. Appreciate it, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Bye.
Thank you.
Hey,
Bye,
Joe.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you now. Appreciate it.
Hey, Joe.